And welcome to the program. Welcome to Children of the Sun here on WSTX AM 970. I hope you are ready to dance the limits of imagination. I hope you're ready to hear the sound of your heartbeat. This is generally a metaphysical, fifth dimensional type of program, but I like to do community service as well. And so I always like to feature someone on the program that is contributing a lot of positive energy to the community. And I can think of no better example of that than my guest today, Mr. Warren Mosler. And good afternoon, Warren.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us here on Children of the Sun. We are on WSTX AM 970, also streaming live on Facebook. You can get us on Apple TuneIn Radio. You can pick us up on the station's website, WSTXradio.com. And so everybody's looking at me on Facebook right now, but I'm going to turn the camera around to feature the guest so that you can hear the guest. And if you're on Facebook Live, so let me do that now. And but you'll still be able to hear me.
Okay.
Let's see how we're doing there.
Very good.
That looks
Very
good.
Yeah.
All right. You look better than you do in real life, right? And Ruben Fitton, your campaign manager, will be joining us momentarily.
Just getting one of my
and
cards. So.
Probably getting we'll be joined by Ray Fonseca, your Lieutenant Governor
Ray's in St. Thomas.
running mate, but he'll be joining us by phone.
Oh, okay.
So hopefully. And
Nice. This is bullet points of our platform, and all the details are at Mosler4governor.com.
Mosler4governor.com.
With the number 4.
Number 4. Yes, Mosler 4. If you type in Warren or Mosler, it works.
Yes.
So, but the official thing is Mosler4governor.com.
You type a few other things and it works too, but we don't talk about that. So, just in case you accidentally type something a little bit off, we try and get you where you want to go.
Okay.
So tonight we are having a town hall meeting where we'll be discussing the GERS and tax refunds in detail, and and we'll be producing the video there that we'll be putting on the website on those issues. So that'll be our.
Okay, and so the town hall is going to be at 6 o'clock tonight at the
Buy building.
Great Hall in St. Croix Campus UVI.
No, Buy building.
Buy building.
Sunny Isles, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
The Innovative Building.
The Innovative Building in
Sunny
Isles, Buy building.
It's informal. You don't need to be wearing a tie or anything.
Okay. Well, that's right. So when is the UVI? Tomorrow? So the UVI St. Croix campus is tomorrow.
Right.
But tonight at 6 p.m. at the Innovative Building at Sunny Isles will be the town hall, and you're going to be talking about GERS and the income tax returns.
Yeah. And we're going to have a series of 3 of these informational meetings.
Okay.
And then the one after that will be in Frederickstead at the Art Museum, talking about districting and civics in general. Governance.
Cool. Yeah. And
Frederickstead needs to have its own senators.
Yeah. And so that's Innovative, and then UVI, and so you're just working your way west, and then Frederickstead.
Yeah, and then the third one will be here at the bingo building across from Kennedy, where the boxing gym is.
Yeah, you do another one there?
Right, that'll be the last one.
Okay, so, but for tonight?
Tonight is the Via building, 6 o'clock. 6
o'clock. And
it won't go.
The GERS just made some news. Mr. Gibbs was talking about postponing the retirement checks for the new retirees until the government catches up on its past due bills.
Yeah, there's a little bit of political posturing there, so they don't have to do that, but they're allowed to do that. So I don't want to get involved in that squabble, but it's not over a lot of money. The GERS has $650 million under management, holding up checks for $500,000. Personally, I don't think I would do that, but if I was running the GERS, but he may be legally required to do that.
Okay.
Okay, and so if I was legally required to do it, I would do it, but otherwise I wouldn't. But the GERS, our point on the GERS is a point no one else is making. I talked to Mr. Nibbs about it. He was on the radio and he agreed. And so he said he's going to go back and revisit it. But if you look at the monthly money they take in, the monthly money they disperse, they take in about $140 million every month. And they give out a little over $250 million. So they're negative 114 million, I think is the exact number. However, the $250 million they pay out to retirees, quite a bit of that comes back to the same government, because the GERS is the government, so government sponsored, as income taxes. and other taxes, but primarily income taxes immediately. So there might be 60 or 70 million dollars of that comes back immediately. So if they pay out 250 and withhold or get back immediately 70, 75, how much did it cost them that? Just 175. See what I'm saying?
Right.
It's not costing the GERS. The GERS is putting out 250. The government gets 70 of that. The GERS isn't supposed to be funding the government with $70 million a month out of the retirement fund. But if you look closely at the flow of funds, that's what's happening. And then the government's spending that somewhere else. Well, that money, in my mind, right? You credit it back to the GERS. They're only responsible for the net payment to the retirees, not the gross payment. Okay, and so that cuts their deficit down to maybe $40 million a month, maybe 50 instead of 110, 120. Okay,
so more than half.
Oh yeah, we've just added over 10 years of life and no cuts in benefits, no increases in contributions. Okay. And, we'll take callers a little bit later.
We'll
check.
Josh is gonna check to see who this is.
Okay, so this is a critical understanding. Now let's look at how much. Let's say it's 70 million a month, which would be 700 million for the year.
Right.
Okay, how much is that over the last 10 years?
Right.
This is serious money.
Yes.
Okay, so we can see that one of the reasons the GERS has been depleted is because GERS money has been going to fund the government in very, very large numbers. Okay. And so, like not doing that anymore, we don't have the GERS issue.
Right.
Okay. The GERS is it. Okay, and then we have two more measures we take for the GERS. Is that right?
Yes.
Hello there.
Ray, Mr. Fonseca, thank you for joining us.
Hey, how you doing?
We're doing great. Thanks for coming on the program. We're sitting here with Warren and Ruben, campaign manager, and Warren Moser, the gubernatorial candidate. And so, welcome to the program.
So I was just talking.
Thank you for having me. ¿Cómo estás, boss?
Hey, okay, está bien. I was just explaining the GERS situation. And I got the numbers from Ruben where we're paying out about a little over $250 million and taking in about 110 million. Okay, and so they show this large deficit.
You're taking in 197 million for a deficit of about 57 per year.
Yeah. Oh, I just left the paper in the car. So I'll go get it. But that was per year. I'm sorry. Was I saying a month? It was a year. I've been away in St. Thomas and back too many times.
So are we live on the air now?
Yes, we're live.
We are live.
Yeah.
On AM 970.
The point is that 250 million they budgeted we're paying out for the year. Out of that, about 70 million comes right back as taxes. So the cost to the GERS is about 70 million less than they're actually talking about. But the government's been taking that 70 million and spending it somewhere else for the year.
Oh, definitely.
Right. So over the last 10 years, the last 20 years, the government's probably funded the GER. The GERS has probably funded the government. I gotta get some more sleep. For something like $1 billion of GERS money has gone to the general fund that shouldn't be there. It needed to be credited. So we're immediately going to start accounting for the GERS properly. It's money. If it pays you $3,000 and you pay $1,000 back in taxes, it's only going to cost the GERS $2,000, not $3,000. The government spends $1,000 somewhere else.
So you basically address a serious financial problem by just complete incorrect accounting.
Yeah. Now it creates another serious problem, which is now the government doesn't have that $17 million,
so
but it's not supposed to. It's not its money.
And you have other plans for bringing government revenues.
Right. So now we need major plans for fixing the government. So it's not about fixing the GERS. It's about fixing the government because the government's been bleeding the GERS. Okay. But in addition, there were 600 million of rum cover-over bonds authorized a few years ago.
Right.
We can't sell them anymore. They were never sold, and now we can't sell them because the bond market won't buy them. But we can contribute those securities directly to the GERS to add to their portfolio.
Right.
So they'll have an additional 600 million of bonds in their portfolio that pay principal and interest for the next 20, 30 years, guaranteed by the rum revenues. Okay? And we're also going to work to be increasing rum revenues, of course, but that's beyond the scope of what I'm saying. The third thing for the GERS is that when I was at the meetings, 400 people, it seemed to me half of them wanted their money back. They didn't want to be in that program anymore. So if they've been in it for 15 or 20 years and maybe put in $70,000 and they want their money back, say give it to them. It's a bad deal for them to get their money back in that the match from the government to give them their monthly payments for the rest of their life is double that.
Right.
Okay, so it's going to cost the government $140,000.
If they took the monthly payments, they would actually get more than if they take a lump sum.
Right.
But nevertheless, some people would prefer to take the lump sum.
Sure, 'cause
either they want the money for an investment, or they don't trust the fund to be there when they're 80.
Exactly.
Right. I don't blame them for it, but I'm just saying they reduce the government's unfunded liability. So if the government pays you $70,000, their unfunded, liability might go down $200,000.
Okay.
Or their liability for your account. The unfunded part was 130 or 140. Here's the GRS numbers, right? So we've got.
Right.
No, this is just for the month.
Yeah, that should.
Total collections, 139 million. Total disbursements, 253 million. Oh, that was for the fiscal year 2017. That was for the year. Okay, the difference was a deficit of 114 million. Now, out of that 253, we probably got 75 million back as income taxes, which means instead of 114 million, it was more like $40 million cost.
That's a significant.
Sure, because when you have 650 million and you're only paying 40 million out net every year, you last a whole lot longer than if you're paying out 150 million. Instead of running out in 5 years, you're running out in 10 years or more. And so we're grossly overstating the problem of the GERS because we keep our own income taxes. We're understating the problem of the government that's been taking this 75 million from the GERS money every year. So we're shifting the problem from the GERS to the government where it belongs. It was never a GERS problem. It was always a government problem, and it's just never been recognized.
And it's easier to solve a problem if you begin by correctly identifying it.
That's for sure. Yeah.
So you'll be talking more about GRS tonight at 6 p.m. at the Innovative Building, the lobby, Sunny Isles.
Right.
Casual, come as you are, light refreshments. So you'll get into that tonight. But you've been very busy. Are you doing this tonight? Last night you were at the Union Hall Forum.
Yeah.
And
another night before. And it's been running probably 4 nights a week, and the calendar just fills right up. So
you made some good news for the Virgin Islands last night at the Union Hall Forum.
Last night was exceptional.
Tell us about that.
I think it was a watershed day, and
for the Virgin
Islands, because they asked about Lime Tree, and I pointed out that the Lime Tree and the governor had conspired to deceive the Senate as to why we needed the new contract. Their point was the tax law change at the end of the year where corporate taxes went down meant we needed to lower Lime Tree's rate from 17.5 to 12 for it to make sense for them to refine oil. Okay. And that was not true. It's just not true. The tax rate is paid on every dollar they make. So if they make $1, and they used to, and previously under the 2015 contract, they were going to pay us $17.50 tax. Now that would be reduced to $12 tax. It's not the reason they wouldn't run the refinery. So when I saw that reason given, I'm thinking, I've been in corporate finance and private equity. I know how these things work. That's not the reason. That small change in a marginal tax rate doesn't sway an investment decision. And then I look at Lime Tree. They've already spent $44 million, as I testified, getting ready to refine for the last 6 months. They had 600 or 800 people working there new on the restarting the refinery. But if they don't get this tax break, what are they going to send them all home? No. They were already doing it under the old contract. They were perfectly happy to pay the 17.5. So I'm thinking, well, what narrative fits what's going on here? What happened? And then I read, okay, under the new contract, we get $70 million up front. We get $30 million for selling property at a pretty good price to Lime Tree, and they will prepay $40 million in taxes. And so we get that $40 million up front in front of the election so we can make payroll to get through November. So what it was a payday loan. The governor had gone to Lime Tree and said, look, I know you're moving along at 17.5, but I'd like to get some upfront cash. What do I have to do to get it? And so they said, we'll give you $40 million in prepaid taxes. We'll buy the property. You pay us the taxes back at 10% interest, by which we have to do, and additionally lower our tax rate to 17.5 to 12. So they said, okay, it's a deal. Now we have to get the Senate to approve it. Well, how do we get the Senate to approve it? If we tell them straight up what happened, they're not going to vote for that.
Because they'd be voting for like a high interest payday loan.
Yeah, the drop in the tax rate lowers the amount that they said at the time we were going to get on their projections from $1 billion to $600 million, or from $1.2 billion to $700. It's all forecast, but it lowered our forecasted the income they forecast by like $400 million, $500 million. So they were getting their money back at 10% interest plus a tax break that saved them another $400 or $500 million. That's why I call it a payday loan. Okay, and
right.
That's what you have to pay for upfront cash when your credit's bad. Okay, so. But if we show it to the Senate like that, they're going to say, no, we'll just leave it under 215. They're going to refine oil anyway. This is not about refining oil. It's about the loan. All right, well, they didn't do that. And Lime Tree, and you can look at their consultants and lawyers at the hearings, presented it as, look, we need to do this because the federal tax law is dropped, and otherwise we won't be refining oil. And so that's what was voted on, and they voted yes, okay, we'll go along with that. Now, whether they would have voted yes or no anyway isn't the point. And whether some senators voted no and so they were right or something is not the point. The point is, this is serious infraction where a private sector company gets together with the governor to deceive the Senate into getting $500 million. Okay, so last night I said that, and the governor was there, and he got up next and first wasted some of his first 2 minutes talking about something else, and then said to me, well, you get corporate benefits too, so what's your problem? Well, that completely misses the point, right? But that was somewhat expected. But what happened next was that Albert Bryant got up to his credit. He says Warren is right. That is what happened, and went on to land-based and just blast the governor for his policies on this.
But this was after you gave his running mate Ziggy Rhodes.
Yeah, right. Right. Before I finished, I said, and not only that, but Senator Roach, to his credit, exposed the lie when he cross-examined, exposed one of the lies or more, but exposed the lie and the deception when he cross-examined Val Collins, Commissioner of Finance at the time, and director of the PFA, or the other way around. Anyway, so Val Collins. Yeah, he pinned him down. You saw the video, right?
Like pinned it, but it was like
he forced him into a confession, right?
Right. It was like a prosecutor,
so
but he didn't ever. It's like he didn't go anywhere with it. He didn't.
Right. So
until last night.
And I said, but up to this point, so far I've been the only one talking about this. Okay, and then the governor says it, and then. So I gave Senator Roach full credit. He did a beautiful job on Val Collins to get the confession out of him in public hearings. And then the governor did it. Then Albert Bryant comes up and says, Warren is right on this. That is what happened. And I was so pleased to hear that, because here I'm like this lone wolf out there where you could be right, but you're dead.
And
right.
If nobody else is joining you, it looks like people think, well, maybe he doesn't know what he's talking about.
Then he sits down and Fonzie gets up. Warren is right, and starts blasting him even worse about other things. Melito Smith gets up after that. It was, let's face it, it was a payday loan, and Mosler is right. We have to, and he went on to give his own take. So it totally brought the issue to the surface. It gave it the credibility it needs. And look, the answer at this point in time is, I think, pretty straightforward. At this point, we're in desperate conditions because everything else has failed. We do need the money. Unfortunately, we put ourselves in a position where it's like the mother who needs milk for the baby. You have to do what you have to do. Having a refinery in your backyard is never your first choice for money, but if everything else has failed, you've got it there. You want to do the best you can and work with the people. And so you go to the senior management at Lime Tree and you have a friendly chat. They're a $20 billion multinational corporation. This is not how you do business. Although if we just put the tax rate back up from 12 to 17.5, and we'll shake hands and move on, and leave everything else alone. And because that's the brunt of the damages we suffered. and and we'll start over from here. And so I think they'd be more than willing to do that if somebody from the government approached them in a professional manner to do that, to make it right. I don't think they want to have a reputation of working with governments this way. It's just not what they do as a company. It's not their. It's not how.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Go ahead, Ray.
Yeah. So we just want to let the public know that in the face of the collapse of the GERS, the Moser Fonseca has the plan to restore the GERS. In addition, we are going to pay the government employees the correct grade and step so that they can retire at the correct salary. And we're going to bring in those additional revenues by working with the federal government and restructure the VI rum cover over bond. This will save the VI about maybe $175 million, and that will either be returned to the general fund or it will be reduce the debt. In addition to that, that restructuring should save us about $50 million in additional amortization interest expense of the bond. So we have a plan to save the GRS. We're going to put employees on the correct rate and steps so everyone can retire at the correct rate, bringing in additional revenue just by those two measures. Of course, Moser Fonseca has a lot of other areas where we're going to be bringing in additional revenues, but we just want to let the folks know that in addition to that, the GER.
Oops. Ray just got cut off. Let me just give a little more color while Ray's off the line here. We have about $1.2 billion of rum cover over bonds. The money comes in from the federal government and it goes to the bondholders. If the federal government were to buy out the bondholders, which they can do at a discount, and so we'd owe the money to the federal government instead of the bondholders, the federal government has no risk because it's money coming from the federal government going to the federal government. The bondholders have risk. They have to rely on money coming from the federal government getting to them. And after watching what happened in Puerto Rico, they're legitimately.
Hello, Ray, you're back. Sorry about that.
Yeah. So, boss, no, I was just getting ready to say that I had joined a little late. I don't know if you're ready.
I was just covering for you here. So give me 10 seconds. Okay, so if the federal government, I was explaining your refinancing. So if right now the bondholders are seriously concerned because money from the federal government comes to us and goes to them, they're afraid it might get diverted. Yeah, which after what's happened in Puerto Rico with Title III or Chapter 3, whatever they call it, it becomes a real risk. And so, but if it's coming from the federal government going to the federal government, there's no risk. And the way the federal government would do that is they issue something called slugs, which are treasury securities. And these are used to back a municipal bond issue. And right now the rate on that issue would be about 2.25%. And so that would refinance us down from an effective cost of probably 7 to 2.25, maybe a higher effective cost. So we'd be saving about 5% on $1.2 billion. So why would the Treasury do it? It's no risk to them. And it kind of makes up for what they did to us by putting their community disaster loan senior to ours. They did a disservice to us for that, and they were forced into it. I'm not blaming them, but they can make up for it at no cost to them, and they can go back and say, look, we helped the Virgin Islands, we saved them $50 million a year in interest with no risk to the U.S. government. So it puts everybody politically in a good position. Okay. Additionally, what Ray was talking about with the $175 million, the current bondholders required us, when we borrowed all that money, to set aside $175 million to be able to pay them if our cash flow is ever short. Right. Okay. That doesn't need to be in that fund anymore once the federal government's done this. So that money is then freed up. Now, we don't know if the federal government would say, okay, you have to reduce your loan, or okay, you can use it for other territorial purposes. Now, what we'll do is we'll show them a plan for reducing other territorial debt, because this is our lowest cost debt, and hopefully they'd allow that to happen. So the debt to the GERS comes to mind, WAPA debt, things like that, that give, again, federal government reason to release this reserve fund rather than simply lend us less money.
Yeah. Yeah.
These are all real possibilities. Hey, Ray, you want to talk about the no resignations?
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Ray Fonseca joining us on the phone. He is the War Moses candidate for Lieutenant Governor. And Ray, so you were talking about making sure all the government employees are paid at the appropriate rate and step. And is that not happening now? And could you tell folks a little bit about your background and where you come at this?
Okay, I'm born in St. Thomas, raised on St. Thomas. I was a product of the public school, straight A student. So won a full scholarship, studied at Florida State University, came back home and, been working locally. So I retired from the government. So I'm one of those tier 1 employees. So I ran the Virgin Islands Housing Authority. I'm one of those rare Virgin Islands who salary in the local government was more than the sitting governor.
Wow.
Based on my experience and qualifications. So the grade and step, it works like this. Basically, let's say, for example, you're a teacher or a fireman, you join a union, and you have a union contract. The governor staff negotiate a contract. You're supposed to be on, let's say, grade 19, step 12. Well, you're actually now being paid on grade 16, step 1. So you're not on your correct grade and step, so you're not being paid your correct salary. This really impacts you when you get retired, because the retirement payments are based on, they average it over the last 3 years of your salary. So you're in effect being cheated, for lack of a better word. You're not getting your correct salary. So our plan that Mr. Moser just detailed would correct those things. So the other thing that I wanted to explain also is that, I've worked in the government, and, the current employees have a great fear when a new administration is coming in, because the normal way of doing it is that the governor announces after the election that most every senior staff, executive directors, commissioners, deputy commissioners have to submit a post-dated letter of resignation. So in effect, say it's come, the elections is over, and we're now in December 1, well, all the employees that fit that category have to send a letter to, for example, Governor DeYoung, for example, because that's the actual case. So you send a letter to their Governor DeYoung. I, Ray Fonseca, here tender my resignation effective immediately. So the governor, when he comes in, will either accept it or reject it. What it does, though, it affects the employee's ability to collect unemployment, because, if you resign from your job, it's hard to claim unemployment. So it's like double whammy. You're fired, and now you can't collect unemployment. The most Fonseca team, that's not our management style. We intend to reuse all of the executive staff. It'll be an evaluation on a case-by-case basis. But from the way I look at it, about 92% of the current senior executive staff will be able to remain in their current positions.
Because you're not gonna fire people for no reason just because they weren't on your campaign staff.
Exactly, and that's not a good reason. That's not a good way to do business.
Yeah, we need like they do in the federal government, a civil bureaucracy that stays there from one administration to the next, so you don't lose that institutional knowledge. I would think would be a good thing.
Exactly, you're not starting over.
We don't have that. Let me just say something. I know Ray will be the insurance guy. We've talked about this. I just got the note in front of me. We have this insurance guarantee fund that we're supposed to be somehow finding $50 million to put into. Instead of that, we can just buy an insurance policy on the insurance companies. Okay, so if you go to a large insurance company like John Hancock or something like that, they'll sell you an insurance policy that says if any of your insurance companies default or go broke, they'll pay for you.
Cool.
Now, what they will also do is give you a list of approved companies, so that way you know who's good and who's not, right? So we'll have a list of approved companies. I don't know how many will be on the list, 10 or 20, and those will be reinsured, so to speak, but it's not actually reinsurance. It's called default insurance. They'll be and so that if there is a problem and one of those countries goes bankrupt, it can't pay, then John Hancock or Metropolitan Life or any of those other people would step in and pay. And so that way we don't have to put this $50 million up. And the premium on this is very, very low. It's a whole lot lower than the cost of keeping $50 million. It's a whole lot lower than interest rates, because this is all borrowed money for us when we get $50 million. When you have debt, all your money is borrowed money, because it could have been used to pay down the debt.
Right.
So we might be paying 5%, 6% for money. If we have to keep $50 million there, it's costing us $3 million a year. The insurance premium might be $250,000. It would be a whole lot less, because they're picking the companies and using their judgment to make sure they don't have to pay a claim. And so we'll have good companies on the list.
Yeah. Was there anything else left? I mean, the Union Hall meeting, the forum last night. No one had a real chance. You guys, none of you got like a whole lot of time.
Yeah.
I was wondering, any leftover issues from that you wanted to talk about? You have more now that you have a little bit more expanded time.
Okay. Yeah. It was reminding me, one of the things I stated at the meeting was that I'm at a disadvantage to the other candidates because I don't have any family here to hire from. So, but
so you don't even fire.
The GERS was a big issue for us. Now we never have time for that. They give you 2 minutes. It takes more than that to explain it. I started to explain how we can get matching funds in. I got it in, but big problem is matching funds. You get $100 million grant, $500 million grant, whatever, and then they need 20%, maybe 10% matching funds. So on a $100 million grant, we might need $20 million just for a number. And so we can't do it because we don't have the 20 million. Right? But so what I'm saying is, if you look at the 100 million, and let's say, I don't know, 80 million of that goes to salaries, wages, it's to pay people down here to do the work. Okay, we are going to collect about $20 million in income tax on that money. So if we went to the bank and borrowed the 20 million and securitized it, told the bank the money to pay it is going to come from the income taxes on the people who get hired as the money is spent. So so they'll want us $20 million. The collateral is the income tax receipts. We will assign them the income taxes, legally assign it. So then as people get paid, we withhold income tax and they pay other taxes, income taxes, that money will go to the bank to pay them back. Okay, and so it's built-in financing. The other states can't do that. States can't do that. Florida can't do that because they don't get the income taxes go to Washington, not to Florida. Right. So here they go to us. So we have that money to use to get the grant to begin with.
So this is like creatively using our unique situation to our advantage.
Yeah, and it's not just a hurricane. There are literally billions of dollars of project money's available if you have the matching funds. So if there's $1 billion project with 100 million required matching funds, we would never even go after it because we don't have the 100 million. But if we could borrow the 100 million, and then pay it back from the income taxes as we pay out that extra 700 million of wages and salaries to people who will be living here, working here, and bringing that.
Are these matching funds from the federal government or like private philanthropic, or where are they from?
Well, it's largely the federal government, but there are other matching funds as well. I've seen them from other places. So so we have the ability to go after matching fund financing that other the states don't have, and the municipalities in the United States don't have. It's a huge competitive advantage.
It is, and another competitive advantage that we have, or at least the way that we're different from the states, which you've also talked about, your program for the $10,000 per student for the school thing. Yeah. Everybody here, you start talking about that, and people hear he wants to close down the public schools and charter schools and vouchers. Because if you were in the states talking this kind of talk, you'd be a right-wing Republican, and that's exactly what you'd be trying to do: is shut down the public schools and make them all church schools. Yeah. But you're actually a lefty progressive, and what you're talking about is the exact opposite of what it would be in the states, because our condition here is the exact opposite. So explain to folks about that a little bit.
Let's start with one thing. We all talk about how bad the conditions are in the schools, but you don't hear about that with the private schools. And the people who have money, the families who can afford it, are sending their children to the private schools, and they are not suffering the way the families who don't have the money are suffering right now with the school system. So number one, that is unfair. Okay. That children are being directed
penalized for being poor.
It's based on money rather than merit. Right. So first of all, people come to my office. They used to come every day, not so much anymore, for scholarships to go to Country Day or Free Will Baptist or something, because they want to move their children. They've been accepted, they're doing well, and I can't give everybody scholarships. Hundreds of them. So I give a few, but so I'm there like, what if we just gave everybody a scholarship? Just done. What if the government did this? Why me? What about the government? And so I said, okay, let's see what that would do for the government. So we look and I see the government is spending $20,000 per student on the public schools. Okay, and that's $200 million a year on approximately 10,000 students. And these numbers aren't exact, but they're pretty close. All right, and so what if the government said, okay, look, so I went around to all the private schools with a friend of mine, and we asked them how much money you would need. Would $10,000 be enough to run your school? So we go to Country Day, and they're charging
$10,000 per student.
Per student. They're charging $15,000 for their high school students. I said, well, could you live on 10? They said, yeah. They said, we don't average 15,000. We get that from some students, but others are free or very low. And if we could get 10,000 from everybody, we would have 500 students with $5 million. We're in good shape. I said the same thing to some of the board members from the Antilles a month ago, 2 months ago. Could you get by on that? They thought about it for a minute. They said, yeah, we do very well on that. So taking them at their word, for $10,000 per student, you gave every student a $10,000 scholarship, just like they're asking for me when I come into my office. The private schools would be free for all students. They would get in based on merit rather than how much money they have. So if a qualified student comes from a low-income family, he'll get in before the unqualified student from a family that has a lot of money. Right now, it's the opposite. The student with the lesser qualifications gets in because his parents can afford to pay, right? Okay, so number one, that's in line with our values that children should be advanced based on their merits. Number two, it saves the government $10,000 for every student that they put through private school instead of public school. So let's look at our big numbers again. We have 10,000 students. Let's say half of them were going to private schools on government scholarships. Okay, so that would cost the government $50 million.
Right.
And at $20,000 a student, they'd be spending $100 million on the students going to public school, assuming they scaled it all down, which can't be done right away, but over time, a couple of years, it gets scaled. Look, our public schools are already closed. We're already scaling ourselves down anyway. But so now the government just saved $50 million. Now it has $50 million to support the public schools if it wants to do that, if the political will is there. Okay, and so this system allows qualified children now, rather than children with money, to go to private schools, and also generates $50 million that can be put back into public schools if we so choose.
And if you put the $50 million into the public schools and you had presumably fewer students going to the public schools,
yeah,
some
on
of them
a
are
per
going
child
to the private.
basis, it's up to 30,000 from 20. Now, I'm not saying that throwing money at the public schools is going to fix the public schools. I'm just saying this program does not rob money from public schools.
Right.
On a per student basis, it adds money.
Right? Yeah.
Okay, look, we're going to get, the governor promises new schools, and I like new schools, but does anybody think our education is going to go from worst in the country to best because we have new buildings? No.
Yeah.
It's a bigger issue than that. Go ahead.
One thing I'd like to add, Warren, too, is that what it does is, let's say, for example, the parents, the mom and the pop go to Catholic Church or Lutheran or Methodist or Moravian, they probably identify closely with the values of those churches and would like their children to go to Catholic school or Moravian school.
Right.
Hello?
Yeah,
and
you're on.
So what our plan would do is that it would allow more parents to have their kids go to the church school. So there'll be more church schools being opened up so that the kids can grow up with good Christian principles and values. That's something, with the crime, with our youth, especially the young male youth, it's really out of control. And that would be one way that I see it, most of Antiquity, that I will be able to keep our children, raise them with the same Christian values that the parents have.
Also, Ray, the technical schools would be opening up, because if somebody wants to have a school where you do reading, writing, arithmetic, and then you learn welding in the afternoon for 2 hours, and so you go out and get a $75 an hour job, they're going to get $10,000 per student to do that. With 10 students, they'll have $100,000. It'll take 2 of them to teach them how to do it, and they can run that school on $10,000.
So this would also be a supply of funding for the
school for the arts.
School,
okay,
yeah.
Every school for special needs, Kings Hills special needs school shut down. If they had this, they'd still be open. There's a new special needs school in Christiansted, trying to get $15,000 from families with money. They won't have to do that. They'll all be funded. And so it'll open up a huge diversity. Every pastor I've talked to, I said, would you open up a school? Yeah, we have 30 children. Would we get $300,000? I go, yes. He goes, wonderful. And you'd save the government $300,000. So you'd be doing your patriotic duty at the same time. They already have the buildings. They don't have the mold problems. They don't have any of the other problems. Okay, and so it can't be done in the States because in the States the private schools cost double from what the public schools cost. Public schools cost $15,000 in the States, and the private schools cost $30,000. So what they do is they give partial vouchers. They'll give you a $10,000 voucher, but then you've got to come up with the other 20. So all they're doing is helping the people who already have money. They're making it more regressive.
And they're spending taxpayers' money, and
doing it,
which is not available for the public schools. So, but here it's the exact opposite. Our public school is more expensive than the private.
Right. So it gives us the opportunity to offer the choice. And look, the public schools and the private schools, how different are they? They're right next to each other. It's the same people. The teachers are interchangeable. The teachers,
they all go to the same teacher colleges.
Yeah. The teachers will be in demand because the schools' classroom sizes are smaller in the private schools. So for the same number of students, you're going to need more teachers. So we're creating a teacher shortage. Teachers will be in demand. Okay. And this $50 million is there for teachers' back pay and for everything else we could want to do. I can't tell you what the legislature will do. I can tell you what I'll suggest they do, but at least they'll have options. If they'll have money and they'll have options, and there's a chance they'll do the right thing.
Right. And at the same time, they will be able to allow the parents who are church-going members to raise their children in that church community, have them be schooled in those decent Christian principles. There'll be more church schools, more private schools, more trade schools to teach the kids the skills.
Yeah, what about Julian Jackson will be opening up a school for his high-risk children that he's working with.
Yeah.
Right? Okay,
that's another example, right?
And, Otto, here at
I mean, we all
gym
agree
here in
that
town.
our children are not learning well enough in the current setting with the current private school. So if you continue down the same road, how we've been educating our kids, you're probably going to get the same results. So our path is a way to, the government will expend less money and the kids will get a better quality education.
Yeah. So if you look at it now, some people say, well, the public schools give a better education. Well, the parents will have a choice. They can send them. We're not closing down the public schools. They'll be there, and they're going to have more money per student, so it's going to get even better. But they'll also have a choice of private schools. And today, I have never met any parents that wouldn't send their children to private schools, personally, if they had the funding. But there are some. I mean, I've had people on Facebook tell me they prefer the funding. That's fine. I respect their choices. I went to public schools, and they were perfectly good, and I think it's a good idea to go to public schools where you get a variety of people and exposure, but we've got issues with the public schools now. The words kicked around are deplorable. If you're in modules that are, aren't working, and go ahead, Ray.
Yeah, I was saying that I went to public schools myself, and the only reason though I went to public school is I was the last child. By the time Mom and Pop get to me, there was no more money, Pop told me we didn't have the money to send me to college school. But I did well because, my mother and father still made sure I did my homework, which is another thing with the education that we have to get the parents more involved. So what we're going to do is in a grading system, the at-risk students, meaning those that have a behavior low score and those that have an attendance low score. We're going to improve upon the system that is actually on the books now with the Department of Education, where you have a monitor go and visit the home, etc. Now, we don't want to get into any issues where the parents are going to lose their kids. That's not what we're doing. We want to do it so that we can ensure that the kids have a proper learning environment. And if Mom and Pop has to work 2 jobs to make ends meet, then the system, our education system, will provide, an after-school program, a counselor, etc., a place where they can meet so the kids can get proper study. We don't want to have any situations where families are being broken up because maybe the mother or pops had an alcohol or substance abuse problem, etc., etc. But it will help us to identify those issues and fix them, address them before
remember, look, all the pastors who are running private schools, the headmasters, they're going to be competing for these students because they get $10,000.
Right.
And they're going to do everything they can to keep them in school, not drop out. They have to go to the parents and explain why their school is the best. So the parental involvement goes sky high. And the students become important because they're the source of the funding for the schools.
Like you said before, they have a $10,000 check pinned to their little shirt.
Yeah.
So
isn't little Sally cute with that $10,000 check pinned to her little T-shirt? So she should go to our school.
So they're gonna want to, if the kid is struggling, and if the headmaster or the teacher may very well be motivated to go to that child's home and try to figure out what's going wrong.
Sure, because they're competing for those
help.
children.
And give them like after-school help, tutoring, recommendations,
And there'll be schools that specialize in children having problems. And they'll be going to the parents, look, if your students' grades are slipping at that school, you really ought to send them to my school because I can help them. So, they've got to be on their toes to keep the children. The children are going to be valuable commodities that people want, which they are. Look, the children is the only future we have. What's around in 50 years if no one has any children?
Right.
They're the only real investment.
And okay, so this might be a curveball, but right now it seems like we have a situation here, at least on St. Croix. I don't know about St. Thomas or St. John. I suspect on both, where repairs to the houses, the blue roof homes, aren't proceeding as expected. There's phase 1 construction that got done, and then somehow the money isn't getting from the housing finance authority to
Did you say money?
Contractors to the subcontractors.
Yeah.
And people are actually subcontracting companies, and workers are leaving island without finishing the repairs because they aren't being paid. So have you looked into that? I had an opportunity to look into that.
It's the whole theme about the government's broke. Okay, now and we get things from the federal government like a new hospital or a new school or something like that. But that's kind of like your dad gets you a new car, a big Cadillac or limousine or Mercedes or something, and says, "Here, son, you have a new car, but you don't have any money for gas. Okay, you can't take care of it. You can't park it. You can't maintain it. You can't make. What good is it to you? You can just look at it. Okay, so we can get this infrastructure, but what you're talking about, we can have these things come down, but we have to have the funds for the general operating expenses. We have to have the funds. That's all based on a reimbursement basis. We have to pay them first and then get reimbursed. And that's what we do. Okay, that's what Ray and I are all about, making sure we're properly funded so we can do these things. Right now, the amount of federal funds we've got that haven't been immediate emergency funds where they send linemen down and that type of thing, close to zero. We've identified funds. We've identified billions of HUD money and just zeroed in on $243 million, but we haven't got it. It takes people in compliance, filling out the paperwork and doing it right, and then following through on it. And the governor said, when he talked about the pay raises, that he has hundreds of vacancies and doesn't have the people he needs for federal compliance, which means we haven't even started on this stuff. We may never get it if he can't manage to do that. That's what we know how to do. Now, I was talking to our consultants, who I happened to run into in a coffee shop in Red Hook yesterday in the morning. And I said, I've been thinking that what we need to do is have our compliance base in Washington. We have a delegate to Congress who has a staff, federal staff paid for of 18 people. She doesn't need 18 people to drive herself around or read the newspaper, but we could use 10 or 15 people to employ people there with federal money to head up our compliance. And the people who are good at compliance and are efficient at it, I said, it seems to me they're in Washington. Well, they completely agreed and thought that was an excellent idea. If we had a Washington unit to head up our compliance efforts, they're right there with the agencies to make sure that this stuff gets done in real time on a timely basis. So, there's an urgency to all this. You can't just, it's not my nature to just sit around and wait for it and say, well, we're going to have a meeting next week or the week after. That's not it. It's got to be done now in real time. And to me, that's one way to expedite it. And
if you need to hire people to fill out the forms, and you haven't even hired the people yet, you're a long way from getting the money out.
Yeah. So, and what Ruben's doing is he's giving me things we've talked about. I'm not sure how much time we have here. we need like a division of government that does this. And there are people in government already. It's not about establishing some new bureaucracy, but getting them organized, getting them together so they work together with each other. We have people in all different departments chasing grants down. That can be organized, reorganized by good executive management into something that can work together, because there are a lot of synergies and overlaps that somebody working at the police department for a grant, someone at the health department, I'm sure there are a lot of things that
Right.
on a joint basis could be handled a lot better than people who never see each other, never talk to each other. For the accounting and the compliance, that can all be better organized. A lot of our problems are simple organizational. How many people have told you, oh, to get a license, I have to go from this department to that department, and it sits on a person's desk and it has to go to the desk next to them, and that takes a week. And these are the kind of things that, look, we're seeing a complete failure of executive management. And with the sewers bubbling up in Charlotte, Amelie, nobody has to be told that. We know everything the thing is like just crumbling around us. It's been over a year, and the modular schools are still, I don't think they're all open yet. Some have problems. Offices are still full of mold that hasn't been touched. And the mold is there, as Melito Smith told us, from neglect. It wasn't mold before. We created the mold by not maintaining the buildings. And I had people from the hospital tell me the air conditioner goes out in the operating room because they don't have the $300,000 to fix it, and the operating room is shut down, and we lose millions of dollars of revenues over not being able to fix the air conditioner. It just goes on and on. The list of executive failure, management failure is endless. And you're bringing in two people who've had management experience, successful management experience, doing things. And we have a desire to see this work. Not a desire to
right. You were like you said at the union
dinners.
forum the other night. You're like chomping at the bit to get started.
Yeah.
You want to make things work here.
Yeah. Ruben reminded me of another idea. We've got so many, and that is to make Frederickstead the UVI campus. Why not take the life that's at the campus there, all the young people, and transition that over to Frederickstead, whether it's classes, executive offices, and everything else. And then those buildings there are at the tech park, where they're struggling for office space and everything else. Well, and the tech park's going to flourish under us. I mean, we know how to bring in those businesses and what they need to come down here. And we'll have that UVI campus space would be good for them. They don't want to be in Frederickstead. They need that kind of office space. And then as a campus, Frederickstead would be second to none in the world in terms of natural beauty and parents coming down visiting. You're right there, and it's spectacular.
To help revitalize downtown Frederickstead.
Yeah. Look at like what the universities do to Cambridge and Boston, Massachusetts.
Yeah, I'd like to see us have like
town.
a college town that's prosperous.
Then you get schools for the arts coming down there. That's what does it. You need some kind of a germination. You need a seed. You've got to seed these places, and using the universities do that automatically if you put them in the right place.
Right.
They become a magnet for all kinds of coffee shops and everything else. Everything we want to see there. So,
are you staying till? I mean, you have to leave at 1:30, or can you stay?
It's up to you.
Okay. Well, we'll keep going then. Great.
Yeah.
Two of your more recent campaign promises were to immediately after being elected governor fix all the potholes.
Yeah.
And also
my only campaign promise. The rest are proposals.
You will not lie to us.
Yes.
And so I wanted you to get into, because as soon as you talked about you're going to fix all the potholes, everybody was like, okay, is that a permanent? So are you going to do temporary patches of potholes, or are you going to do permanent repairs of the roads that will last a couple of years at least under federal standards? Or are you going to do both?
We have a permanent repair program underway from FEMA. The governor just announced $30 million for roads. Well, actually, what I heard is $25 million is for the engineering study we have to do to get the roads done. So it will happen. It's going to take a while. And I happen to know the person who's down here, one of our consultants who does the road projects. He's very good, very capable, but it's going to take time. He's went into all the issues he has to get from here to there. So in the meantime, there's certain things you can't allow happen while you're waiting for something else.
Right.
Okay, you can't allow a patient to die in the operating table because you're not going to replace the air conditioning, fix the air conditioning because you got a new one coming in 2 weeks. You got to do it. And then when the new one comes in, it comes in. And if it costs you a little more, it costs you a little more. But there's certain things that have an urgency. We can't have cars breaking, not every day, continuously, flat tires, broken wheels, broken axles. The cost to the community is in money, lost time, inconvenience, aggravation.
I mean, everyone, most of the people living here are struggling with finance, and then to this constant drain on the pocketbook of car repairs is like an unseen
So even though
tax.
there are new roads coming and good roads coming, it doesn't mean you wait 6 months to fix the potholes. You fix them now. These are basic public services. And how many potholes do you think you can fix with 1 mile of asphalt that it takes to make a new road? We're going to have hundreds of miles of new roads. How much do you think? A couple thousand? All right. So we've got the asphalt already. We've got people on staff already waiting for these projects. We put them to use. The marginal cost, the additional cost of the government to fill potholes is next to nothing. We just got to get them out there. We have to have a pothole hotline, so to speak, where if you see a pothole, you take a picture of it, you email it in, and Public Works has somebody on the way to fix the silly thing. And if it reoccurs 4 days later, you fix it again 4 days later. And at some point, we're going to get a new road and we're going to get it right. But in the meantime, we're not going to have 500 people a day breaking their axles and breaking their wheels and getting flat tires and having their lives disrupted over this. So it's just certain things that have a sense of urgency that have to be done now. And they're not that expensive. It's just a matter. Yeah, go ahead, Ray.
That's right. No, I was agreeing with you. Yeah.
Yeah, you're in construction. You know what it takes to fix these things. It's not all that much.
Yeah, well, one of the things that I've noticed is that, we're messing with elevations. When we're repairing the roads, okay, first of all, we're digging down. So what you're doing is you're lowering the elevation of the road. When it rains, the water is always going to accumulate in the lower elevation. Take a lot of places in the United States, even the Dominican Republic, when doing a new road, they are actually raising the elevation so the water can run on the sides of the road and not under the road. In addition to that, with the tar, when they apply the asphalt, they actually apply a sealant to the asphalt. I think I can remember them doing a sealant to asphalt maybe about once or twice in the last 5 years. I just don't see it. Maybe I'm not passing on the road when they're applying the sealant, but I'm not seeing them applying the sealant to the asphalt. Basic stuff like that.
Yeah. So, look, we've got the financial ideas on how to pay for it, how to get it done. We've got people with hands-on experience to know the right way and the wrong way to do these things. Let me go on to the hospitals here.
Okay.
And you're going to hear the same theme that we heard for the GERS with the hospitals. The hospital has patients. They bill the insurance companies. And I'll use round numbers. They take in $10 million. Okay, they pay their staff, cost $10 million. And now they have no money for Band-Aids. And the nurses have to pay for their own thermometers, and they can't pay their WAPA bill. And so the government now has to subsidize them and give them $1 million or $2 million, kicking and screaming, you need to cut back and save. Okay, well, when the hospital pays their employees $10 million, again, maybe $3 million comes back to the government as taxes.
Right.
So the $10 million that came from the insurance company that went to the employees, only $7 went to the employee. The employee gets 10, but he pays 3 back to the government for taxes. So the employees only cost the government in the hospital 7 because they pay taxes back. Okay, and so that $3 million is still there to pay Band-Aids and thermometers and to fix the air conditioner in the operating room. But the government has taken it in its taxes and used it other places, and then says, "Oh, the hospital can't pay its bills." It's not true. You have to look for public accounting. You've got to look at the net. So the hospital, number one, when you add that back, it's not so bad. I don't have the exact numbers. It's floating. But it's not that far off from breaking even or making a little money. So look at that. Now, the second thing is all these satellites around the hospital, like radiation and blood labs and that type of thing, they are making millions of dollars a year. And in a place like Florida, they say the hospital is losing those revenues, so we've got to bring those things back into the hospital. Well, here, it's the opposite. Here, if they're making millions of dollars a year at a 40% marginal tax rate, they're paying, every million they make, $400,000 is our money. It comes back to us. And the money they pay their employees are paying us income taxes. So we may be getting half of their money, half of their profits back, okay, as income taxes. That's a lot better than we can do if we bring it into the hospital.
Sure.
All right, so what we want to do, unlike the states, is encourage all these satellite medical facilities around and bring them down and give them incentives to be here because we're getting their income taxes. Okay, we don't want to give them all their income taxes back as incentives, but we can give them efficiencies to work down here, reasons, because we want places that come down that do services largely that bill insurance companies, bill Medicare. Okay, so that there's a funding source for them, and they're servicing our community. So now we have all these new additional satellite medical facilities to service the medical needs of our community, and they generate millions more in income taxes to finance the rest of our government, the rest of our public services. So again, the idea is to encourage these to come down. Now again, if the states encourage them and they come in, the states don't get anything out of it. All the income taxes go to Washington. We get it. We have a competitive advantage in bringing these people down here. And how about the people that have long-term patients that do bone marrow transplants where the patient's got to be there a year or more? If their patients have to be here a year or more, we get the income taxes from the patients and from all their doctors and everybody else. That gives us a whole lot of money to give them incentives to be here rather than anywhere else.
And I would think if you're a bone
competitive advantage,
but if you're a bone marrow patient, you need to be at the place for a year or more. Being in the Caribbean would be conducive to your healing.
It's not so bad.
It's not so bad.
Yeah, but you have to take care of them properly, but they pay for all that. And so what I'm saying is, when it comes to medical tourism, we have a huge competitive advantage because we keep our own income taxes.
Yeah, that's what I was alluding to, medical tourism.
We're not using it. Same with sports tourism. Oh, we'll get these teams down here to train and everything we want. Why are they going to come here? Oh, the weather's nice. Well, how about this? An NBA team like the Celtics or the Spurs have payrolls of something like $115 million a year, which means their employees, if you want to call them that, are paying $50 million a year in federal taxes, $1 million a week. If they come down here and train, then they're working down here, then their income is VI source income. Those taxes go to Washington, but they belong to us. And Washington will transfer it back to us. So if the Spurs,
if there's someone who knows to ask,
if you fill out the correct paperwork, right? So if the Spurs are down here for 12 weeks, we get $12 million. Right? That's enough to buy them a new stadium, especially if they're going to be here for 5 years, a new practice facility. Especially if they're going to be here for 5 years, that's $60 million to support their practice facility. So we sit down and talk to them, and can you think of somebody we have that might be able to get an audience with the Spurs?
I think there's one guy anyway.
Comes to mind, the big guy, Tim Duncan comes to mind. And
I just figured that was why you were bringing the Spurs up in the first place.
Oh, you got me. You're ahead of me. All right. So, but now he can go back to his boss, the team owners, and say, look, if you practice in the Virgin Islands, the money we generate as a team and send to Washington, we'll go to the Virgin Islands, and we're willing to contribute that to support your training facility, and we'll let you own it. Pay property taxes, you can own it. Okay, and so we've got a huge competitive advantage over Florida or anywhere else in the States when it comes to attracting these teams once we recognize the power of using the mirror tax code to our advantage, recognizing that people working here generate what's called VI source income, and the taxes on that income belongs to us. It's not some special program. There's no dispute over this. There's no approvals or anything like that. It's just how it works. Okay.
Yeah.
No.
And if I can add, one other note in banking, as far as since we're on the topic of bringing in extra revenue to the Virgin Islands, the U.S. government regulators have redlined the United States Virgin Islands. This means the FDIC member banks, including J.P. Morgan and Wells Fargo, have been directed by their regulators to not make any loans to the USVI. So if you have property here in the USVI and you want to go to Wells Fargo or J.P. Morgan, they're not gonna give you a loan. If we can, we're gonna approach this. We're gonna go through the Interior Department, through our delegates, and we're also gonna work with the Congress. But this would free up additional monies to be available to the Virgin Islands and reduce our interest, there. We've all seen our lack of state-of-the-art medical facilities, the lack of textbooks and computers in schools. Our children, like we discussed, they're not learning well enough. And when our 18-year-old child turns to violence, the Moza Fonseca team realizes that there's a hole in our child's heart that no government could ever fill. Increased taxes are holding us back. That's another thing. Sin taxes, grocery taxes. government owes approximately, $90 million in unpaid income tax refunds. My fellow Virgin Islanders, look around us. Are your roads better? Is the sewage better? Our hospital better? What about our schools? Our education commissioner gets no suspension, no expulsion. What would happen if your little child, Johnny or Johanna, went and did that same thing, brought school property home? Is she a good example for our children? Most everything has gone from bad to worse. That is unless you're one of the select few individuals that continue to control our politics. So I asked our fellow Virgin Islanders this question: are you better off now, today, or 4 years ago? I haven't spent a lot of time in the Virgin Islands learning politics. I've been here all my life. I was born here, raised here, worked here. But I know the ways of our local politics must change. Only the Moses Fonseca team has the precise qualifications, meaningful experience, and vision our VI needs to restore and stop our financial disaster. Only Warren Moser is a proven financial genius with experience managing billions responsibly. That's right. Warren Moser is the only candidate has experience managing billions responsibly, and I emphasize responsibly. Moser has a superior monetary track record and management background, and the Moser Fonseca team will always obey the law and tell the truth. This is the team. We ask everybody to realize that your vote is the ultimate power. Take a look at the man or the woman in the mirror and ask yourself, are you satisfied? Make that change. Vote number 7 on November 6th. Moser Fonseca. We ask you to push number 7. This is where the Virgin Islands are at, my fellow Virgin Islands, and we've outlined our plan on where we're going to lead the Virgin Islands, where we're going to take the Virgin Islands. And I want to go back to us in red line, the regulators. This affects our community tremendously.
No.
Not get loans. That is what drives small businesses.
Right.
Yeah.
So if the redlining were removed, we have more local ownership of local businesses because they'd be able to get business loans to
Let me tell
into business.
Let me tell you just specifically how it works, because we're all about giving you real world examples. So I've got the VIA building in town. I call up JP Morgan. I say, I'd like to get a loan against this building. It has so much a month in cash flow. It's a AAA building. It survived 2 hurricanes without any damage. It's got leases with the phone company and with doctor's offices. This is AAA credit, okay? And he says to me, well, do you have any property in the States? I said, well, I've got this. He said, well, what do you have in the States? And I can tell him. He says, well, we can do that. I said, well, what about the one here? He goes, let's talk about the one in the States.
Wow.
I said, okay, look, I've owned the bank for 25 years. You've been redlined. It's the regulators, isn't it? He goes, I really can't talk about it, but you understand. This is what they tell me. And then I go to BBVA, I get the same thing. I go to, Wells Fargo, I get the same thing from the top New York banks the top Bank of America. When I go to talk to them, and I say, look, I don't blame you. I know it's the regulators telling you. I know you know that this is illegal activity, redlining, but it's the regulators are going to classify your loans, and you have to do it. So what we have is a case of regulatory overreach. It happens all the time. And this is another service we're going to offer to our local banking community. I've been there. I had my bank. They have what they call examinations. Bank examiners come in sometimes twice a year. And then they have exit meetings where you sit there and they tell you what the results of their examinations were. And the local bankers cannot push back or respond to the regulators, or else there's retribution. Okay. And I saw it in my bank, over and over again. And they did not like me because I didn't play the game that way. If they were doing something wrong, I'd call them out on it. And as governor, with Ray as lieutenant governor, we can sit in on the exit meetings of our banks with the regulators and make sure our banks are treated fairly. An example was the last exit meeting before I sold the bank, the regulators looked at my bank president, who was 55 years old, and we're all sitting there in suits, board of directors. And he says, I'm downgrading you on management from a 2, which is a good rating, to a 4, which is not a good rating, because you have no written report to run the bank. And it's required that you have a written report.
A written report to run the bank?
Yeah, you have to have a written document, a plan, a written plan. Yeah, it's called a strategic plan for the bank. And the bank president says to him, well, sir, you were just in my office. We do have one. You were just in my office yesterday. We spent 5 hours going over it in detail. Don't you remember? And he says, well, yeah, okay. And then he moves on to the next thing. 2 weeks later, the report comes down from Atlanta, downgrading management from a 2 to a 4 for no strategic plan to run the bank. Okay. He calls Atlanta. Well, what do I have to do? He says, well, you can file an appeal and you can do this and you can do that. But in the meantime, you're under a memorandum of understanding, a letter of review, and you're restricted in your activity. Okay. These are the kinds of people that the banks are dealing with. I know the same thing happened to the Bank of St. Croix. The regulators came down and did that type of thing to them. Just, it's what they are. They're not nice people. Okay, I don't know where they find these people. I think they watch as children for who's pulling the wings off of flies, and then they make them bank regulators. But they need support from somebody else. They can't speak for themselves, or they will get crushed by the regulators. Okay, and so it's a massive abuse of power. We're going to be on the side of our banks in these situations.
Wow, I had no idea that kind of thing happened.
Oh yeah. So talk about WAPA a little bit.
Sure. Yeah.
Anybody still care about that?
I think everybody cares.
Just pay the bill and shut up. Yeah. The biggest problem with WAPA is their sales are down. Their production is down from where it was. Last I heard, we're producing 71 megawatts. So we have a big overhead that's fixed, maybe $150 million a year. And that's split up among all the customers. So as we lose customers who go solar and go off the grid, that same $150 million has to be paid by fewer and fewer and fewer people. So if you're the last one on the grid and everybody leaves, do you know how much your bill is, right?
Well, you're going to
$150
million.
Yeah.
Wow.
It is. You're the last guy left. So what we need is more people to share the bill, right?
Right.
Okay. And there's no effort underway to increase WAPA's sales output. If anything, they're helping you go solar. They're talking about more net metering. They're talking about we can help you with a more efficient refrigerator. And that's all good things, but it makes the bill go higher and higher and higher unless we can increase sales. So I've proposed a industrial park that attracts businesses by offering them low-cost power, but power that still makes, but at a price that still makes a profit for us, but is low cost. So how does that work? We've got new generators coming that we bought that are, I think, have already been shipped to St. Thomas, and another year they'll be in St. Croix. And even though WAPA's will be probably 40 or 50 cents a kilowatt, these generators are producing power at 10 cents a kilowatt. The cost to get 1 extra kilowatt from that generator is 10 cents. The other costs are all for overhead and everything else. So if we can get electricity out of this generator for 10 cents and we have excess capacity, which we do, and we can sell it for 15 cents in this new industrial park, we will have the lowest priced electricity in the Caribbean. It gives us, again, a competitive advantage to get the EDA out there with the right people to bring in businesses that can use a lot of electricity, and that can take advantage where this low cost power is a major attraction for them, like a bottling company or something like that. And bring them in, which will help lower our WAPA bills because we make a profit off of it. It's not a huge profit, but it's a pretty good profit, and that gets used to help to lower the cost for everybody else. And it increases our sales and our profits. And at the same time, it brings in people and jobs and
so it's
salaries
a win-win.
And taxes and everything.
It's a win-win.
Yeah, so it's a way for us to compete with the rest of the Caribbean. We've got this new power equipment. It's going to give us a very low, what's called marginal cost of power, not the avoided cost, they calculate the marginal cost, which will give us a competitive advantage to get these companies.
Well, and one of the things that Mr. Fonseca was just talking about, Ray was just talking about, was you were talking about telling the people the truth and being honest with the people, which was getting back to my earlier question about your plan to fix the potholes and to tell the truth and to be honest. And you would think that those drivable roads and being honest should be givens.
Goes without saying, right?
That no, right.
Why is that
goes
an
without
issue?
saying. So it shouldn't be make news, but it does. But I'd like for you to give us some insight into you as a human being. What is your personal view on being honest, open, transparent, and telling the truth? And Ray said, we won't break the law. Like for the two of you, tie all that together.
Well, let me start just by saying that I ran my investment companies for a long time, and I was always 100% transparent, and no one on Wall Street was, and they're still not. Every trade I did, everybody knew. My positions were reported. They were public information. When the credit people came in, they said, "Oh, well, you don't have to worry about us. We're not going to disclose your positions to the trading desk." I said, "Please tell them. It's an open book. It's wide open. I want them to know if they see something wrong with it. I want to know about it. It's my position." And I've just always lived that way. And it's maybe, I don't know what it is, but that's just my nature, where if you tell me something, I tell you, now I might give you the wrong answer because I make a mistake, but not because I'm lying to you, or not because I'm trying to manipulate your answer. And Ray, go ahead. You can speak for yourself on that.
Well, let's just take an example of a typical negotiation. Figure the governor, Mosler, and Ray Fonseca, we are in a negotiation with Lime Tree because we needed some additional money. We think that we had given away, the last deal had given away. Well, there's a way to negotiate, but as long as you realize that there's certain principles, certain values that cannot be compromised. And this is what I'm talking about. You cannot compromise your values and your principles. You have to do certain deals, okay? But the deals have to be in the best interest of the public. And that's what we're looking for. We're looking for people to serve the public, not for personal gain. So if you want to be in the Mosler administration team, that is the theme, to serve others, not for personal gain. So this is what I'm talking about. Those are the types of principles and values. And you always have to tell the truth and obey the law. The income tax is a perfect example. And I have to admit, I give credit to Senator Adler Fonzie Donister.
Yeah.
He was largely responsible for passing that bill that requires the governor to deposit 10% of the tax, the income tax that is withheld. That's what the governor needs to do, obey the law. If the governor Mack was obeying the law and had withheld the 10% of the income taxes that he collects, there would be enough money to reimburse your income tax come April 15th when you file. So that's what I'm talking about. It's very simple. You have to be honest and obey the law.
I'm going to go one step further. I'd like to, it may not happen exactly this way, but I envision making expanding the job of the head of the Office of Management and Budget, to be functionally the CFO of the territory, the Chief Financial Officer. And we'll be getting all the financial information from all the departments in real time as it happens. All the bank accounts will be online and kept up to date. And that will be available for everybody. Okay, so I don't see any reason everybody should have that information. If I've got a plan for the GERS.
Whatever information you have as governor.
Yeah, as governor. And so if I have a plan as governor for the GERS, I'm not going to say I'm going to announce it next Thursday and make everybody wait, torture everybody. I'll just tell them right now. Look, here's my plan, and on Thursday I'll have a conference to answer any questions. That's fine. But if I know the plan, why aren't I telling you now? Why am I making you wait? It's just not like that. I don't do that to people. I have just more consideration for people than that. And it's going to be a very, very, very transparent administration. You're going to have information. I know the Daily News interviewed us. Knows what the questions were. What are we going to have to do to get information? When they started telling them, it was almost disbelief that that's even possible. And then I pointed out I actually ran my financial company that way, and I'm sure they're checking it out now. But that's how I am. That's how it's going to be.
Well, I guess with some politicians, the idea of you have more power if you can make people wait till next Thursday.
That's nowhere in my
universe.
Yeah, it's just
think so.
completely out of my off the radar screen. It's not what I. It's not how I think. But I don't. It's not in my value system. I don't care.
So, the Mosler Fonseca team, it's about reclaiming our Virgin Islands, restoring our sense of common purpose, and realizing that few obstacles can withstand the power of thousands of voices calling for real change. Some of the politicians are saying change course now, but they are really talking about going back to a road that we've traveled before in the DeYoung administration. That's a bumpy road. I don't want to go back on that course. We must, Holland, to finish answer that question on values, we must assume that
Right.
Uh-huh.
This is Ray Bratcher.
You're on Children of the Sun with Ray Bratcher.
Those are fighting words there.
No, I'm not really. Holland and I are friends.
Yeah, no, I know. Holland's good. Just teasing you.
We must assume the best in people instead of the worst. And, Holland, we can disagree without being disagreeable. And like I said before, we can compromise so long as you know those principles that can never be compromised. We all must be willing to listen to each other. For years now, this governor has failed to maintain our schools, the hospitals, the roads. He's failing our retirees, our veterans, our government employees, our small businesses. Look at Main Street here on St. Thomas in front of the Enid Bar Library. How long does it take to complete the Main Street road? I was having lunch with a vendor, a local black restaurant owner. I'm not going to call his name, but he told me, Ray, up to 33 businesses on Main Street have closed, and now they want to close the other street that leads to his business. The government is not business sensitive. They are forcing businesses to close their doors. That can't happen. Another thing I want to mention real quickly, right, is the Frenchman's Reef Resort, right? Marriott Frenchman's Reef Resort.
The hotel.
Now, they're saying that they're going to open in 2020. Wow, we are in 2018 now. So what happens to the 800 employees? The unemployment fund has been depleted. So basically that means that the VI government has to try to borrow more money from the U.S. Department of Labor funds, or if the workers can't find a job. The Westin is another one. New Bay is another one. There are thousands of employees have been left unemployed. What do they do? They have a family to feed. They have bills to pay. It is not good here in the Virgin Islands. The financial situation, it is not good.
Yeah, I've got to comment on something a little bit different, Ray. I was at the forum a couple of nights ago, and they asked me about crime. And I started off by saying something that I've been saying for a long time. And I used to have a different spin. I used to talk about how the main cause of war was 18-year-olds. Okay, so I started off by saying, look, 18-year-olds are a dangerous animal. Okay, and I know I was one of them. Right, so who am I talking about? Talking about me.
Talking about yourself.
Talking about me. And then I said, look,
or 18-year-olds in general.
Yeah, 18-year-olds in general are dangerous animals, right?
And that's like an expression. Like you would say.
And I know, but then I specify. I said, look, I was one of them. I said it was 18-year-olds who followed Hitler in World War II, and it was 18-year-olds that followed Roosevelt, and they followed Napoleon before that to Russia. Okay, it's like, okay, so who am I talking about? I'm talking about me. I'm talking about Europeans, right?
Yeah, some 18-year-olds.
Yeah, okay, and then I said, look, and the answer, and I said, any community's success or failure is based on how you channel that energy of your 18-year-olds. That's what determines the success and failure of the community. And so that's why we need to support, children in school, high risk, people in that age bracket from 16 to 20 or whatever. They're in the high risk area statistically. And we need the after school sports and the programs and the trade schools and everything else. So that's what I'm talking about. So it hits Facebook that I said that I called our 18-year-olds animals, okay? And I said that all 18-year-olds in the Virgin Islands are criminals. And then it started spreading around, and people are asking me, did you say that? Did you say that? Okay, somebody took this out of context. I just want to say this is going to happen now for the next month. It's because that's what happens in political season in the last month, and they try and do things at the last minute that you can't answer to. So, look, all I can say to people is if it sounds, somebody says something that doesn't sound right to you, it probably isn't right. It's probably taken out of context. It's political tricks that they use, and just beware of it. There's nothing we can do about it. It's just the type of thing that happens going into the last month of any political thing. I don't do that to anybody else. The sad part in this, if you go look it up, it is broadcast by one of our senators. So to take a cheap shot like that out of context. But, again, that's politics. We're not in church here. We understand that that's what happens. So I'm not acting that way. And that's not what I'm telling you. I'm just telling you to just be wary of these type of things that are done to attempt to disrail what we're trying to do here.
Well, and the particular is unfortunate that particular debate was what they're calling a media blackout because there was no the live internet broadcast was lost and there wasn't one. So somebody's taking advantage of the fact that they can't they can say you said whatever they want to say, but the people who were there know.
Look, with today's technology, you can take anybody's 5-minute talk and make them be saying anything you want, just by cutting and pasting and everything else, and it's going to happen. And so just beware of it and try and.
But I'm thinking if there was like a full video of that debate, they wouldn't be able to mischaracterize what you said.
But they do it anyway, even when there is.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but you're right. I mean, it wouldn't be. They'd have less. Easy. But it's still done. And it's happened to me the last 3 times I ran.
I'm sorry.
It's happened to me the last 3 times I ran. Where people do these types of things. Somebody said something about
let me get the phone back here.
Moser wants to close down all the beaches or something like that.
Hi, Mr. Fonseca?
Yeah. I guess I'm acting like an 18-year-old. All dropped.
Oh, no problem. All right, and
so
Warren was telling us about the.
And they're still saying that something about I'm trying to close down all the beaches. I mean, it's like nobody's trying to close down all the beaches. Why would anybody be doing that? This doesn't make it, but they do, and it spreads around. And I'm just saying it's going to accelerate going into the last month. You get some avid supporters of other people that are just willing to do anything to try and help their candidate. And I'm just saying, just expect it. It's part of what happens.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think we know. So we have a.
So for St. Croix, let me get back into specific here. Non-stop flights from New York. We had them before Hugo. We had a great economy here. We lost them with Hugo. We never got them back. I've talked to people in tourism. Why can't we have nonstop flights? Well, you can't deal with the airlines. They're hard to deal with. They don't. They give you a number, and then when you agree to it, they change it to a higher number. And I say, well, why don't we just go with the higher number?
Just number of passengers?
Yeah, or how much we have to reimburse them if the plane isn't full or something like that. Because the amount is trivial compared to the amount of what happens here. And so you get it back through other forms. And they said, well, we don't want to do that because, it's not right for them to change them. I hear all this stuff. It's like somebody doesn't want us to have nonstop flights to New York is the answer. And I do. And I think that'll make an enormous difference. People who were around back then completely agree that will help our economy. The other thing is we're working as best we can now. We're going to do it a whole lot. We're going to support it to our full extent we can to bring in the cruise ships to Gallows Bay that are 100 to 300 people, the high-end cruise ships. And cruise ship companies are already agreed to it, apparently. I talked to Port Authority, and it's just us getting our act together and getting ready for it. You see some activity in Gallows Bay that's going to be accelerated. And so I think those two things will go a long way to the kind of St. Croix we want it to be. We don't want I see St. Croix as the villas, the residential area, the guest houses, and St. Thomas as the Atlantic City, where all the razzle dazzle is. And when you do it,
that's what I do. Okay.
When you keep them separated, they both do better. You try and mix it, and neither one does very well.
Right. And you've got. It's always good to have. Okay, Walt Disney World. You got Walt Disney World, and you got Epcot Center.
Yeah.
Let's take a quick commercial break.
Okay.
And Ray. So Ray, my name is Ray. My name is Ray Bratcher. This is Children of the Sun, and we both are named Ray, so that's why I'm voting for you, because you have you've got to be brilliant.
Well, I really appreciate that. I really appreciate that. Thanks for your confidence.
Okay. Let me put you on hold for one moment while we do a commercial break. Okay.
Okay.
Is that a call? Oh wait. All right. So you've been listening to Children of the Sun on WSTX AM 970. We are going to take a quick commercial break, pay some bills, and we will be back shortly.
I think we're ready to wrap it up.
Yeah. Okay.
We're gonna get back to it.
All right. So looks like we're ready to wrap it up. All right. Well, I'll just keep this going then. All right.
Hear the news and then talk about AM 970 WSTX.
No. Yes.
Well, you want me to go back on?
You guys just want to come back and wrap up?
Okay. Yeah. And we're back. We're here with Warren Mosler and his campaign manager Ruben Fenton and we've got Ray Fonseca on the phone as well.
Yep.
Hi, Ray. We're gonna be wrapping it up. Warren wants to get to the next debate event at the Innovative Building this evening at 6 p.m. And he wants to get there early and warm up. So I'm joking. It's several hours, but
I still got a full-time job.
He still has a full-time job. Yes. So I'm glad you straightened out the comments about the mischaracterization of your position by one of your opponents.
Yeah.
And then, the opponent is also one who did not endorse your analysis on Lime Tree, but I suspect that might have been because the people who came after you could agree with you, and the people before you gave your answer had nothing to agree with yet.
Yeah,
so you might see a
that.
statement.
I understand that.
And
because they're certainly open to that. And so I can understand how some people could mischaracterize things. So I sympathize with that, and sometimes you can be dead right. You've done everything right, but you're dead anyway. So you went. The light was in your favor, but somebody ran a light.
Right.
So and I recognize that. So you got.
Well, and I think the bottom line is that you want to provide these young people with constructive ways of channeling their energy, like going to school, going to college, going to VOTEC, going into like a Peace Corps or Civilian Conservation Corps type of thing. Just like any society that doesn't find something for the young people to do,
serious consequences.
Doing something with the young people. So it eventually happens.
Okay.
So people should come and see you this evening at the Innovative Building at 6 p.m. And you'll be talking about GERS and the income tax returns.
Right.
And then
we're also for reducing the Senate from 15 to 7 and have real districting. So Frederick, for example, will have its own senator. St. John will have its own senator. But Ray, do you want to wrap up for us?
I wanted to say a quick wrap up in Spanish, boss.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Sí, mi nombre es Ray Fonseca, nacido y criado aquí mismo en San Tomás. Por bastante tiempo yo he admirado el clase de políticos beneficiándose ellos mismos cuando el pueblo está sufriendo y las cosas cada día se toman peor. Ya no puedo aguantarme más. Por esa razón yo al decir unirme con el señor Warren Mosler como su teniente gobernador. Me siento firme y con mucha potencia. Dios bendiga nuestras bellas islas Viernes, a todos ustedes y al próximo gobernador Warren Mosler. Muchas gracias.
Okay.
Thank you, Ray. That was Ray Fonseca.
So we're asking you, we are number 7 on the ballot. Roll with us with the lucky number 7. And we're asking for your vote on November 6th. And on November 7th, there are going to be 6 slightly used government limousines for sale on eBay for you to bid on. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Have a good day, everybody. See you later, boss.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, everyone. We'll be right back. Yes. Who's on 2?
Doesn't look like anyone's on 2.
It's